following study has parental advisory explicit content and viewer discretion is advised. Every single day when we step outside of the front door of our house, we experience something that sometimes we are even unaware of. It is the laws of attraction. It varies and sometimes the direction varies, but there is a sexual flow and counterflow between men and women that goes on all the time, every day, on the streets, on the train, in the marketplace, and in the office. It can be small, by a mere glance, a touch, a flirtation, to eventual courtship, and even to the most intimate relations. They vary. But eventually, one will want to put these full feelings into action. And the Bible says that marriage is honorable, which is the best and most suitable place for these sexual feelings to be shared. And recent studies have confirmed this, where researchers have long known that married people tend to live longer and be healthier than their single peers. Though male and female both have their roles, when a man can make a woman smile, you must know he is doing something right. As a man is meant to be the head and the priest of the home, if he takes his role seriously, it will keep the whole household stable. The 16th century English reformer William Tyndale said, "In many things God hath made men stronger than women, not to rage upon them, and to be tyrants unto them, but to help them to bear their weakness." But that sacred bond between man and woman that will eventually lead to marriage is being attacked on all fronts. And even though all cultures around the world still uphold the family institution, something is cleverly trying to distort our concept of sexuality. In a book posthumously published in 1933 titled Occult Theocracy, the late Edith Starr Miller, a woman from New York, USA, who married into the English aristocracy, got access to many secret files on secret societies, and saw that a movement was slowly developing that would eventually destroy the future generations. She mysteriously died before this 741-page volume was published, but she forewarned of what's to come. She said, "Today, most of the good people are afraid to be good. They strive to be broad-minded and tolerant. It is fashionable to be tolerant, but mostly tolerant of evil. And this new code has reached the proportions of demanding intolerance of good. The wall of resistance to evil has thus been broken down and no longer affords protection to those who, persecuted by evildoers, stand in need of it. In offering this book to the public, I have endeavored to expose some of the means and methods used by a secret world, one might say an underworld, to penetrate, dominate, and destroy not only the so-called upper classes, but also the better portion of all classes. In these days when apparently vice triumphs and virtue penalized, it may be well for all of us to fight the undertow by which our children may be dragged under and must of necessity perish. Vice rings and secret societies form but one vortex into which youth is drawn and destroyed, whilst the good people, because of their ignorance, look on helplessly in despair. The author talks of an underground world of secret societies that will draw many young people into a morally depraved culture she called vice. How will this current generation get targeted, where their minds will be molded into a constant barrage of paganism?
There's a quotation that I almost used in the Harry Potter book. I'm paraphrasing, this won't be exact. In magic, man has to rely on himself. So in religion, of course, you're looking for outside support. But that's the appeal of magic. I'm not saying I believe magic is real, I don't. But that's the perennial appeal of magic, the idea that we ourselves have power and we can shape our world.
If you carefully listened to the words of that British billionaire novelist, screenwriter and film producer, J.K. Rowling, it was like you were reading Genesis chapters 2 and 3, where a struggle takes place of whether man wants to listen to the voice of God from heaven, or take the advice from that great dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, and trust in our own hearts, the voice within. There is a new world order drive to reject the teachings of the Lamb of Calvary and encourage all men to go back to pre-Christian religions and philosophies that can trace all their teachings to the prince of the power of the air. The Greek world with its brilliant columns still impacts the modern world with its philosophies, and the Roman world with its brutal culture of violence inherited from the Greeks their ideas and spread it throughout its empire. But at the appointed time, the carpenter from Galilee appeared on the world stage when Rome was in its zenith, and from then to this very day there has been a more intense struggle between heaven and earth, and it is strange that many crave to go back to the cultures that were destroyed as a result of their moral degeneracy. And you can clearly see who was the chief god of Pompeii in Rome. It was the serpent. Throughout the duration of this study, the Leviticus chapter 18 insignia will be used in imagery that may cause offense and for those who are weak and struggling, even on imagery that was used without it in previous studies of EvenAttheDoors. An article in the London Daily Telegraph newspaper praises the Greeks for the nude art. It said that unlike the Assyrians, Persians and Egyptians before them, the Greeks made heroes of the nude form. The Romans followed their lead. That's why so many original Greek bronzes, later melted down, are only known today thanks to Roman copies. The Greek ideal was celebrated during the Renaissance too. In museums around the UK, you can see how the Greeks celebrated nudity through art, not hiding a thing. Venus, the god of sensual pleasure, where we get the word venereal disease from, was a continuation of other fertility gods from surrounding cultures. And Rome adopted this nude art into their culture. Sometimes soldiers were depicted naked. But the Renaissance, a French word that means new birth or regeneration, was nothing more than a revival of Greek paganism in 14th to 17th century Europe that once again celebrated the nude form in art. Today, American fantasy drama Game of Thrones is one of the most popular TV shows in the world, and it's not for its fantasy, but for its nudity, something that has been never done on a TV drama of this global mass appeal. From looking at YouTube, you can see the number of hits for the trailer of season 6, and you can be guaranteed there will be more nudity. When one of the actors gave away the plot about the new series, Ian McShane said the HBO show is only about breasts and dragons. He used the English slang for breasts. But the ante will be stepped up with a new show called Westworld, a revival of the 1970s classic. And this sci-fi, according to Esquire magazine, will have even more nudity than Game of Thrones. Public nudity is turning into a big issue. We are now becoming desensitized to seeing anything nude. China has praised Facebook for its censorship on nudity. Facebook has clamped down on nude images on its social network. But why? Is it because they have a moral responsibility? According to the Financial Times, Pinterest supports nudity. But why does not Facebook? Facebook, meanwhile, made a commitment on Wednesday to review and improve its online moderation procedure, and the article explains why. After several companies pulled their advertising campaigns in protest at the fact that their ads were being shown next to offensive, misogynistic content posted on the social network. So it wasn't for moral reasons, but because it was affecting its business. And when money is involved, there is a game changer in the rules. Amazon has taken advantage of this selfie craze by winning a patent for its customers to pay no longer online, but by a selfie, face recognition. But recent studies have shown that more and more women are taking naked photos of themselves. But it is getting out of hand as children have access to modern gadgets. The new fad of sexting is affecting teens in Singapore in Asia and also teens in South Africa. But in the United States and in the UK, it is huge and it's increasing among teenage girls. Some believe that teens should not have phones until they're 16. But that will not work, seeing that the selfie trend is now getting out of hand, that children are sending naked images of themselves who are aged 11, but it gets worse. It is starting from the age of 6. That is very scary, for in the United States, children get their first phone when they are 6. Some serious questions need to be asked. What on earth is a 6-year-old doing with a phone? What, to hook up with their peeps? They have just been weaned off the breast, and now a parent is giving a child that level of responsibility. Even if they have no phone, the narrator personally knows adults who have also given their young daughters an iPad. And you can also take pictures and selfies via this technical gadget. But as this UK advert shows, when you are sharing your privates online, someone can always get access into your personal account and start a dark new trend called revenge porn. And many are suffering the consequences of the nude selfie trend. Many are concerned over this trend, for studies have shown that it is getting out of hand, where there is an increase in suicides and law enforcement agencies are getting involved, where whole schools are showing naked selfies. Many blame celebrities like Kim Kardashian, who electrifies the social media with her naked selfies, but she is only a part of the problem. Though teens are obsessed with their phones, they are no different to adults, for many parents are obsessed with their phones, and adults send as much naked selfies as teens. And even the people who are in high places in law and who are spying on our every move to keep a record on our dark secrets are also really no different to us. In a drive to push the Greco-Roman nudity culture on the modern world, it has got out of hand, and now raising children is getting harder than ever, where corrupted minds prowl the internet for images of young children to fulfill their voyeuristic appetite. Why is there such a fuss about nudity? And is there anything wrong with everyone seeing you in your birthday suit? Don't tribes in the Amazon jungle and in parts of Africa see each other nude every day? Well, they are born into it, so that's all they know. But let us get a background to this contentious era, and we have to start at the beginning. In Genesis chapter 2 and verse 24, it reads, "Therefore shall a man, male, leave his father and mother, and shall cleave," which means joined together, "unto his wife, female, and they shall be one flesh." So the first institution that God gave to mankind in the beginning of time was the beautiful sacred marriage institution. But what does it mean, they shall be one flesh? What is a question? Know you not, or do you not know, that he which is joined to an harlot, which is a female or male prostitute, is one body? For two, saith he, shall be one flesh. That one flesh means the sexual relations between a man and a woman. For it was God who designed every fiber, cell, hair follicle, stimuli, and electric impulse in our bodies so that a man and a woman can enjoy each other's love in a guilt-free environment in a marriage, not having to worry about a sexually transmitted disease from somebody else or an unwanted child. In a book titled Christian Sex and Family Planning, it documents how central this is within a marriage. Sex is more than an act. It is a state of being. The sex hormones flow through the entire body and have their effect on tissues, on emotions, on the philosophical outlook on life. A man is a man, not because he looks like one, but because of his basic physical and psychological development from the moment of his conception. When a man is all man and woman is truly feminine, they will attract each other. This attraction is built into their humanity. In its proper usage, then, sex is more than a biological urge to be gratified. An attitude that focuses attention only on the inner drive reduces the partner to a mere tool. No, sex is greater than the sum of its parts. In lifting a person out of self, it partakes of the spiritual. The sexual experience is a spiritual experience, and as such is to be considered sacred, set apart. But the following text is where we get the nude issue from, and it has to be explained very intelligently. So we have to have a thorough understanding of this passage. Genesis chapter 2 and verse 25 says, "And they," both Adam and Eve, "were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed." What does that mean? Lucas Cranach the Elder was a German Renaissance painter and a close friend of German reformer Martin Luther. When he painted a picture of Adam and Eve, he covered both of their genitals with leaves, but he still showed Eve's breasts. What is the significance of the covering with leaves? And when were they naked and not ashamed? What does that mean? For if it is not explained clearly, then New Agers, naturalists, and naturists, though they do not believe in the Bible, when it is convenient, they will quote from it to justify going nude, for they say that is how God originally made us in the beginning. When Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they knew. For it reads in Genesis chapter 3, verses 7 and 8, "And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together, and made themselves aprons. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden." There is a word highlighted by EvenAttheDoors. It is hid. Why did the first humans hid from God? This is why. "But your iniquities have separated between you and your God, and your sins have hid his face from you, that he will not hear." Isaiah chapter 59 and verse 2. So iniquity and sin separates us from God. And just as J.K. Rowling told Oprah, men continue to look within instead of outside for knowledge, and continues the cycle that started at Eden. But why do they cover themselves with leaves? This is where you will need your spiritual thinking caps on, for the following text will help us to understand why they were ashamed. In Isaiah chapter 64 and verse 6, it reads, "But we are all as an unclean thing, and all our righteousness, that is anything we do without divine help, are as or compared to filthy rags. And we all do fade as a leaf. So the leaf will eventually fade, and our iniquities, like the wind, have taken us away. And as God covers himself with light as a garment, according to Psalm 104 verse 1 and 2. When Adam and Eve rejected that light or covering as a garment, they recognized their spiritual and physical nakedness. And that is why nudity is an issue today. Instagram is an effective way of relaying a message and a powerful way of sharing an idea or ideas to the world. And EvenAttheDoors will encourage people to use it effectively. As of 2015, it was ranked in the top 10 downloaded apps at number 8. But as it is owned by Facebook and is a part of the surveillance apparatus, it is also using algorithms to rearrange our images. But Instagram bans nudity. But it says it is banned because the app is under Apple's rules of banning nudity. Apple bans any form of nudity or porn. And because of what Instagram calls a stranglehold, the most famous female celebrities are trying to boycott the ban so women can show themselves naked online, and it is turning into a storm. But why is there a struggle of women bearing it all? For in India, Bollywood stars are pushing for nudity scenes, trying to take the Indian culture back to its pre-colonial days, where their Hindu gods were basically all naked. And even in Islam, there is also a struggle. Though its culture has always had a harem of naked women and belly dancers, the veiled culture versus the nude culture is getting intense. For many women in Islam are trying to break into the fashion industry and show that you can dress modestly and look nice. But there are others in the Islamic culture who believe that posing nude will help to stir change. And there are those in the West who believe that this is only imposing racist colonial feminism. An Iranian-born artist, Shirin Neshat, wrote an article in the London Guardian newspaper and said that in Islam, the female body had to be carefully defined, controlled, and concealed to neutralize its impact on the public domain. She is not the only Iranian. Miriam Namazai, who lives in Britain, poses nude in defiance against the strict laws of Iran. And the up-and-coming Iranian-born actress Golshifta Farahani, who has lived in France since 2008, explains to The Hollywood Reporter why she posed topless in a black and white film and in a French magazine. She obviously did not understand the magnitude of her decision, and she is now completely forbidden to return to her native Iran. Some may think that's harsh, but being the first Iranian actor to break into Hollywood, her influence will affect other women. So why is there this global struggle on nudity? And who or what are they struggling against? It is a passage in the Holy Scriptures that lays out the rules, and the 18th chapter of Leviticus that has governed Western attitudes on nudity and sexual relations is also a chapter that the LGBT community hates, for it condemns their lifestyle and calls it an abomination, if you read the 22nd verse. And their agenda is to eradicate this divine rule out of societies. But we will look at the nudity text specifically pertaining to women. Thou shalt not uncover the nakedness of a woman and her daughter, neither shalt thou take her son's daughter to uncover her nakedness, for they are her near kinswomen. It is wickedness. This text was in defiance against the surrounding pagan cultures, especially Egypt, where Min, the Egyptian fertility god, was always depicted as either holding his genitals or it was depicted as symbolizing fertility. Egyptian manuscripts such as the 12th century BC famous Turin erotic papyrus also shows men depicted as the god Min, and has been labeled as the first porno mag. But as many of the Egyptian female deities were nude, when the children of Israel came out of that culture, God was trying to reform them out of that erotic imagery, where the women dancers were dancing naked to the music of Egypt, sometimes only their genitals were covered. The Egyptians also worshipped the sun god under different forms, such as the bull or cow god Apis. And whenever the children of Israel turned on God, they always went back to these nature fertility deities. In Exodus chapter 32 verses 8 and 25, God said, "They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made them a molten calf, and have worshipped it, and have sacrificed thereunto, and said, These be thy gods, O Israel, which have brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." And when Moses saw that the people were naked, for Aaron had made them naked unto their shame among their enemies. So their nudity was an outward rebellion against God unto their shame. But this wasn't the only time they fell to fertility gods. It was a common occurrence. And they forsook the Lord in the times of the judges, and served Baal and Ashtaroth. Baal, sometimes described as Baal, was a Canaanite fertility, and it was believed that when it rained, Baal and Ashtaroth were making love. And to assist fertility, a man and a woman would have sex with each other, acting out the role of the gods in the belief that it would help the cycle of nature in fertility. But when the children of Israel went into a deep apostasy, it was always under the spell of Ashtaroth, also known as the Queen of Heaven, who, like Venus, was a god of sensuality, who is always depicted as fully naked and holding two serpents, one in each hand, for sexual worship and serpent worship one and the same in the occult world. There are those in the church who think that these are nice moral stories for our children, but they are unaware that history does repeat itself, and the gods of Canaan have invaded our homes and our phones, and the phallic gods of Egypt and the fertility gods of Canaan have resurfaced again under pornography, and we shall look more into this near the end. Any man knows that the most beautiful thing to look at on God's earth is the woman. They come in all different shades, sizes, different texture of hair, and as a man, the narrator has to say, praise God for women. Sometimes women complain that men don't respect them. But many times the way a woman carries herself affects how a man will treat her. In the Bible it says that women should adorn themselves in modest apparel. That doesn't mean dressing like an old granny. But in the churches of God, if women want men to respect them, they can raise the bar by carrying themselves in a way that a man will show her respect. And once you show a man that you have value and worth, especially in the way that you dress, he will step up to the plate, and even men outside of the church will respect the women, a respect of recent times that has gone down. The Bible talks of the role of women, both positive and negative. In Proverbs chapter 31 and verse 10, it reads, "Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies." But you also have sexual predators, where Proverbs chapter 6 verses 26 says, "For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life." In the Bible, a woman is also symbolically represented as a church. A corrupt church is called a whore in Revelation chapter 17 and verse 1. And a pure church is described as a virgin in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 and verse 2. In a book that is never ever quoted in church, the Song of Solomon, a woman's body is used as showing God's love for his church, his bride. "Thy two breasts are like two young roes that are twins, which feed among the lilies." But in today's culture, a woman's breasts are used for something completely different. In a book titled Out of the Labyrinth by an ex-Catholic priest who converted to Christ, This Irishman, Leo Lamar, saw how the worship of Mary, the Queen of Heaven, was the most influential belief system in the occult world that still unconsciously impacts the world today. He said that the female form of a goddess was used, as it is today, in big business advertising as the greatest attraction to the worshippers of all pre-Christian religions. To get a background to this, we have to go to the home of pagan idolatry, Babylon. Though it is now occupied by US troops, this civilization in Iraq, though overthrown by the Medo-Persians in 538 BC, only God knows how they penetrated through the fortress of those thick walls, still impacts the world today. For when God condemned it, he said it was a land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. But the Lord also said that Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the entire earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. In the British Museum, Ishtar, the Babylonian fertility goddess, is depicted as completely naked, and these nude images were all over the culture of Babylon. And the naked poses these Babylonian goddesses were carved in still continues in modern art and photography. The 5th century BC Greek historian Herodotus documented in Book 1, section 199, that once in their life every Babylonian woman had to go into a temple of Aphrodite and give her body to a strange man for sexual pleasure. He found it shocking and disgusting. But this is what modern music is encouraging young girls to do. American singer Lady Gaga tells men to do what they want with her body, with no strings attached. And this will be listened to by young girls. And this is also an advertisement for the British mobile telecommunications provider O2. And whether it be Nicole Scherzinger advertising shampoo, or even if it is a car being advertised by Brazilian model Adriana Lima to make men drool, women are still being used for the same thing by a male-dominated industry. In ancient Minoan Crete, the snake goddess was always depicted as bare-breasted, and in the British Museum, the Canaanite fertility goddess Ashtaroth is sometimes depicted as holding her 2 breasts. Many may see these as long-gone relics of the past, but in modern music, females like Madonna holds her breasts like Ashtaroth. Keisha Cole holds her breasts like Ashtaroth. Jennifer Lopez holds her breasts like Ashtaroth. Kelly Rowland holds her breasts like Ashtaroth. And Christina Aguilera does the exact same thing. These influences should give us a picture why young girls are taking naked selfies. But there are even old school heads in the music industry who are saying these musicians are going too far. In the Daily Telegraph, Sinead O'Connor wrote to Miley Cyrus about the sexualization of the teenage star's image, and Annie Lennox, on the other hand, has compared the most salacious modern pop stars to being pimp and prostitute at the same time, calling their behavior a glorified and monetized form of self-harm. Even the secular world knows something just ain't right. But where did this trend begin? These pictures of Janet Jackson shows the transition over time from fully clothed to the Ashtaroth look. When her career picked up, when she did Rhythm Nation, she was fully clad from head to foot. It was a time of innocence. But over time, the industry sexualized her, where as she became more aggressive, a whole transition came, and it is quite clear that she was deliberately marketed that way. But that was in the 1990s. In the 21st century, nearly every major female musician is either scantily clad or just totally naked in their videos, and they just all pretty much look the same. But who is the mastermind behind these women? It is a famous fashion photographer by the name of Terry Richardson, the man behind all the stars who sexualizes all of their makeovers. How influential is he? For there are endless complaints of him as a sexual predator in the industry. ABC News did a write-up on him and said that Richardson is funded by several powerful female stars. Beyoncé, Lady Gaga, Miley Cyrus and Rihanna are four of the biggest names in music, and all have recently collaborated with the photographer on music videos, photo shoots, concerts, or a combination of the above. It's not a coincidence that the very video in which Cyrus, who calls herself one of the biggest feminists, pouts atop that wrecking ball is directed by no other than Terry Richardson. British fashion expert Karen Franklin, who thinks Terry Richardson is a pervert, wrote an article on his influence on the fashion industry in London's Daily Mail, and says that modern fashion is becoming a branch of the porn industry. At the center of this pornification of the fashion world is the American photographer Terry Richardson, the man behind Miley Cyrus's X-rated makeover and advertising campaigns for high street brands such as H&M, American Apparel and Mango. But while his pop credentials are well trained, what is given much less oxygen is his relationship with the high fashion houses, the likes of Mia Mia and Sisley. The preface of one of his books declares, Richardson took the 70s porn aesthetic and made it fashion chic. Even though a lot of popular fashion has always swung to the left, popular female musicians and popular fashion seems that it is inspired by the same source, and it looks like it's going down a very similar dark, turbulent path. For when you see musicians like Britney Spears, who has openly confessed she hates being sexualized, but it is strange who she calls to direct her videos, the man on the top left, whose name is Gregory Dark. What is significant about this music video director? It has been shown that this man who was chosen was a former porn director. And even if you want to deny his past, his art still comes out in modern music, where many who are carefully observing the path it is going down is observing that it is becoming more and more pornified, where musicians are now naked on their album covers, and they are openly telling young people like the Pretty Reckless that they are going to hell. And to drive the idea home, the lead singer has a music video called Heaven Knows, where she is trying to re-educate and mislead the next generation into godless anarchy, not giving them an opportunity to grow up innocently. And with an album called Going to Hell, the Bible is under attack. While the children sing along to Heaven Knows, they are indoctrinated on the multi-screen into believing that the Bible is God's fool, and it is burned in protest. She then strips naked, and only a cross is covering her breasts and vagina. There is a definite struggle in which is the right way to teach sex, and it is heating up more intensely. But what does the Bible say? In 1 Corinthians chapter 6 and verse 11, it says we must flee or run away from fornication. Every sin that a man doeth is without the body, but he that committeth fornication sinneth against his own body. What is fornication for those whose English is not their first language? According to Virtue's English Dictionary, fornicate is from a Latin word fornicatus, from fornix, a brothel or brothels in ancient Rome. To have unlawful sexual intercourse. Fornication is the incontinence and lewdness of unmarried persons, male or female. According to the Concise Oxford Dictionary, it is voluntary sexual intercourse between unmarried persons, or especially biblical, other than between husband and wife. But the Latin word fornication is a translation of the Greek word in the Bible, porneia, where we get the root word porn, where we get the word pornography. But what is pornography? According to the Concise Oxford Dictionary, pornography is explicit description or exhibition of sexual activity in literature, films, etc. intended to stimulate erotic rather than aesthetic feelings. As sex has a very, very strong pull that affects tissue, emotions, and the entire body, even if the urges are hard, the Bible teaches to reserve all that energy and passion for someone special who you will get married to. But how has sex's most polluted form, porn, get started? Most pre-Christian cultures had erotic art, but it was in the ancient mysteries, today we call secret societies, that men could carry out the fantasies of their lowest base passions. And when men joined these secret societies, what they cannot watch or do in the public, they could perform in the secret without getting caught. The advent of photography saw its development in modern times, for it is modern technology that has always helped porn spread. And in the Victorian era, nude photos helped spread the advent of pornography. But it was still very backstreet. And then a US businessman from a Methodist home, Hugh Hefner, made nude photography mainstream and taught men, why do you need to settle down and marry one wife? Just become a playboy. As a clever businessman, he learned the power of advertising, and the first edition of Playboy magazine in 1953 had the most powerful Hollywood icon of the time, Marilyn Monroe, on its front cover. And Hugh Hefner has recruited models, musicians, and female actors that both men and women can relate to, cleverly breaking down the stigma. But porn has expanded even in video games like Grand Theft Auto, where the reward for winning in the game is a chance to rape or kill a simulated woman. In TV shows that once catered for single women, the infamous Sex and the City, it was all about 4 single women and their pursuit of catching a man and keeping him. Many of the episodes introduced porn, where the women were not offended by their men getting a joy out of watching pornography. It is modern digital technology that has spread the influence of porn, and studies have shown that pornography has spurred the adoption of most tech innovation of the last generation. It helped hasten the growth of VHS tapes, interactive CDs and DVDs, and pretty much the entire internet. That's why many people believe that Betamax died, because she refused to promote porn. The technology on the internet, such as pop-ups, the development of web-based subscription business models, anti-fraud security, and micropayment systems for pay-per-view customers, all developed as a result of porn. And now there is cyber porn, where new headsets from Samsung will make this industry more accessible and expand the porn industry more into the virtual reality world. And Fortune magazine did a study how it will expand, where Google, Microsoft, Facebook own Oculus, HTC and Valve will send virtual reality headsets as a result of porn. Mobile cell phone headsets will also be on the market for the expansion of porn, and phone companies who are interested in profit and the competition on the market will also buy into the porn business. This is causing problems as children's phones are also being invaded without consent. Social network sites such as Pinterest has been an open door for porn. Twitter has been an open door for porn with its app called New Vine. Amazon makes money from porn, and children are also getting exposed. But the newest craze is Snapchat. This app is taking the young generation by storm, and it is getting so out of hand that even the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is concerned. Yahoo at first started a porn purge, but then that changed when it bought Tumblr for $1.1 billion, and now that has become a part of the pornification of the culture. Facebook claims it is against porn, but is also getting its cut from the industry. And search engines like Mozilla Firefox profit from porn, and Google claims that it is clamping down, but it's also getting its cut. An Argentinian model is suing Google after she saw her images on porn sites. And everywhere she goes, she has to constantly explain to people that she is not a porn actress. That is why it is very careful what images or photos women put on their social network sites. As it is an information gathering apparatus, Google has uncovered that Pakistan is the world's #1 searcher for gay porn, where it has been nicknamed Pornistan. Hotel companies like Radisson earn profit from it. Hilton Hotel is another hotel chain that profits from porn, as well as banks. And this financial economic juggernaut of an industry has worked its way into the financial center of the world, Wall Street. Everyone is getting their cut. The New York Times records how Wall Street meets pornography, where the General Motors Corporation, the world's largest company, now sells more graphic sex films every year than does Larry Flint, owner of the Hustler Empire. Now this was in the year 2000. None of the corporate leaders of AT&T, Time Warner, General Motors, EcoStar, Liberty Media, Marriott International, Hilton, On Command, Lodgenet Entertainment, or the News Corporation, which is owned by Rupert Murdoch, all companies that have a big financial stake in adult films and that are held by millions of shareholders, were willing to speak publicly about the sex side of their business. So the entire corporate world is getting their cut from the porn industry. This is a multi-gazillion dollar industry that has infiltrated fashion, music, and video games. But what effect is it having on the mind? Brain scans from scientists have confirmed that porn has a very negative effect on the brain, where it rewires the brain. Studies have shown that watching pornography triggers the same dopamine releases in the brain caused by those who are addicted to drugs. And business magazines say how it rots the mind. But what many may find surprising is that women who once saw it as disgusting and degrading are now into pornography. What have been the effects? Regular users suffer depression and low self-esteem, and women are having surgeries for that perfect body part as a result of porn. Women of the Philippines, Brazil, and India are the highest consumers of porn. In India, the government tried to ban it, but the opposition was just too strong, even though 75% of male pre-university students in rural parts of India are porn addicts. In the UK, the National Union of Students says that porn is a standard of a young person's life. But like India, it is becoming an addiction for young boys in the UK, for young boys in the United States, and for young children in South Africa, where porn sites get more visitors each month than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. And the leading countries are Iraq, Egypt, then followed by Serbia. Can you imagine an act that existed in the secret societies has now become a global pandemic? No race, no age, no culture or geography is spared, and many are concerned. The UK government want Yahoo and Google to clamp down on online porn. Cambodia has banned videos from mobile cell phones. According to this article, in China, they jailed them. But in Iran, they killed them. Whenever something gets out of control in society, instead of individuals accepting their own responsibility, someone is always looking for a scapegoat. And in the West, who do you think they are blaming for the sexual pandemic? According to the London Guardian, it is Christianity to blame. For it said that for 2,000 years they repressed it. And as usual, they run back to the Greco-Roman world for salvation. The reality of Christian disdain for the flesh is very visible in the history of art. Nude statues were the highest form of artistic expression in ancient Greece and Rome. With the rise of Christianity, the nude was suppressed, cast out of, listen to it, Eden. Though the narrator disagrees with most of the article, the church has miserably failed and is still failing to tell their congregations about sex. It was the Neoplatonist early church father Augustine who foolishly said that when Adam and Eve sinned, it was as a result of sex. And from that time even till this very day, the West, which has the greatest influence over the entire planet, has been unable to even talk about the subject. Even the church is still totally ignoring the Song of Solomon. How can you be embarrassed to read the Bible? That is weird. Quoting from this 1974 book again, Christian Sex and Family Planning, the author said that for so long, the subject of sex was taboo. Christian moralists did not venture onto this ground, at least not in public. Parents left such instruction to pastors, and pastors left it to parents. Thus, many young people were left in ignorance or received their education via less than honorable means, and so developed either a repugnance for sexual matters or a perverted view of them. The sex revolution, when it came, was to some degree a reaction to this reticence on the part of those who had the right and the obligation to present sex in a wholesome manner, but who defaulted in their responsibility. Now, proponents of lax morals have all but preempted the field. You see, the institution of marriage is to teach both men and women to be selfless. The object of marriage between a man and a woman is to be an example to the world to counteract the root of all the problems in the world, which is selfishness. When two people are seen serving each other, it will have a positive influence on their children and their future decisions, and on their neighbours. But if the church does not teach these things, then that vacuum will be filled, and the Western world was to see the meteoric rise of a man who has had one of the greatest impacts and influence on sex education, US sexologist Alfred Kinsey, a man who is seen as distorting the purity of sex. The New York Times asks a question: was Alfred Kinsey a liberator or pervert? For he was the man they blame in part for the gay movement, Roe versus Wade, that is the legalization of abortion in 1973 in the United States, sex education, the glamorization of pornography, and the loosening of sex offender laws. This is a photo with Alfred Kinsey on the left, and on the wall on the right is a photo of the man who inspired his lapsed sexual attitudes to sex. A man born into a wealthy Plymouth Brethren family, the Cambridge-educated English occultist and ceremonial magician and Satanist Aleister Crowley, whose anarchistic mantra, "Do what thou wilt," laid the foundation for the ideological landscape of the 1960s and 70s hippie era, and for postmodern culture. His sex cult, the OTO, still draws some of the most famous celebrities who remain nameless. And this is where Alfred Kinsey drew his ideas of sex from: a sex and drug addict, Aleister Crowley. It was Crowley who influenced the most famous group of the hippie era, the English group, the Beatles, who claimed that they were more important than Jesus. On their most famous album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts, it has a wallpaper of all of their inspirations, and at the top, second from left, is Aleister Crowley, who inspired their views on sex. For when they split, the late John Lennon, who taught a generation to imagine there is no heaven, released an album with his wife, Yoko Ono, titled Unfinished Music No. 1, Two Virgins, in 1968, where they are totally naked on the front and on the back, in line with Crowley's sexual ideology. The record company EMI refused to distribute it, but Crowley wasn't the only influence of that era. There was the Russian occultist, mystic, and spirit medium, Madame Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, whose occult teachings were incorporated into the organization she co-founded in 1875, the Theosophical Society. And these teachings were embraced by a student of her philosophy, the late English esoteric author Alice Ann Bailey, who described herself as an occult student who founded an organization called Lucifer's Trust, but then changed it to Lucy's Trust for the backlash it brought. Her occult ideas also helped to de-Christianize the mindset of that era. But the man who has had the greatest ideological influence, but is the least known, is a French paleontologist, Darwinist, and Roman Catholic Jesuit priest, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the ideological godfather of liberation theology, who unashamedly said, "I have come not to destroy, but to fulfill evolution." In a book published in 1980 titled The Aquarian Conspiracy by the late Marilyn Ferguson, nicknamed the New Age Manifesto, she documents how influential Teilhard de Chardin's teachings are on people in either secular, occult, or New Age circles. Teilhard, she said, prophesied the phenomenon central to this book, a conspiracy of men and women whose new perspective would trigger a critical contagion of change. Teilhard was the individual most often named as a profound influence by the Aquarian conspirators who responded to a survey, so he is the most sought-after authority in New Age circles. His books, once repressed, have now sold millions and have been translated into every language. These New Age ideas gently de-Christianized the youth of the 1960s and 70s era and opened another door of anarchic behavior, the taking of drugs. Many modern-day defenders of hallucinogenic drug taking say that taking drugs is no different to drinking alcohol and smoking a cigarette. They say it has the same impact on the brain. But who was really steering the Aquarian culture into taking drugs? Was it the youth in rebellion showing their defiance against authority, or were there hidden hands behind the scenes? According to the book The Aquarian Conspiracy, the introduction of major psychedelics like LSD in the 1960s was largely attributable to the Central Intelligence Agency's investigation into the substances for possible military use. Experiments on more than 80 college campuses, that is in the United States, under various CIA codenames unintentionally popularized LSD. Thousands of graduate students served as guinea pigs. Many women thought that the sex revolution would liberate them, but it has cheapened them. In the British newspaper The Daily Mail in 2009, a woman wrote that my generation created a sex revolution and it has been the wrecking lives of women ever since. And she shows the disastrous aftermath. She said we were conned into abandoning self-respect. To be a nice girl was to be looked on as a freak. Health centers handed out the pill like sweeties. Sex, which in previous eras was private, even taboo, became public, with the result that women were expected in their love lives to demonstrate the expertise of prostitutes, except these liberated women gave it away for free. When Tom Cruise and his wife are stupid enough to permit their 3-year-old daughter to totter out in silver high heels, what hope is there for those millions of fans who see them as heroic role models? When a magazine can run a competition in which men send in pictures of their girlfriend's breasts along with a picture of the celebrity breasts they most admire, and the prize is a remodeling of the girlfriends to match the ideal breasts, then something is very, very wrong. So what have been the end results of this Crowley-inspired CIA-manipulated sex revolution? Well, it introduced the pill. But something has grown out of control since the 1960s. In the Museum of London, there is a wax bust of an individual who is suffering from syphilis, a sexually transmitted infection. And prior to the 1960s sex revolution, there were only 2 known STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, or commonly called STIs, sexually transmitted infections: syphilis and gonorrhea. But what are the results today? Health journals have shown that sexually transmitted diseases are now the commonest group of notifiable infectious diseases in most countries. STDs are the most common infectious diseases in the world today. There are more than 20 types. This is a symbol some companies use for safe sex, using a sign that the Church of Satan uses for its sex rituals is not going to stop the flow of STDs. 50 Shades of Grey was a controversial 2015 American erotic romantic drama film that glamorizes a sadomasochistic relationship between a college graduate and a young business magnate. Many campaigners opposed it at its premiere in London, for they say it glorifies the abuse of women. It boosted sales of sex toys in the UK. But in France, the Film Censorship Board said it was suitable for 12-year-olds to watch, a 12 rating, while giving preteens access to sadomasochism. But this is what most people were not told. Before the film was released, when the novel was published in 2011, the London Daily Telegraph documented that the book was to blame for the rise of STIs, sexually transmitted infections, among over 45s. There is always a catch. What about these new popular dating apps like Tinder? Like 50 Shades of Grey, sex apps have been blamed for the recent meteoric rise in STDs, especially in Western countries. In the United States, chlamydia, gonorrhea and syphilis have increased significantly, and they have also increased in the UK. This has been the results of the sex revolution. According to statistics, Sub-Saharan Africa has the highest HIV and AIDS rate in the entire world. India has the 3rd highest number of HIV infected people, and other countries in Asia like the Philippines has an increase in HIV. Thailand has an increase in HIV. Japan has an increase in HIV. And countries like China are saying that gay sex is to blame for the spread of HIV, as well as the African American community in North America. Many Christians believe that the church is oblivious to these things, but the Bible does say we must learn from the past and not repeat the mistakes of our spiritual forefathers. Romans chapter 15 and verse 4 says, "For whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope." We are also told that now all these things happen unto them, that is the children of Israel, for ensample or examples to us, and they are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. So God does not want his children to make the same mistakes as we approach the end of the world, to prepare to enter into the heavenly Canaan. But what happened to the children of Israel just prior to them entering into the earthly Canaan, the promised land? Numbers chapter 25 and verse 1 says, "And Israel abode in Shittim, and the people began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab." Does history repeat itself? At the moment, God's church needs help. People are struggling, but they don't know where to turn to for fear of being condemned. There are some studies which are asking some serious questions. Who really goes to church? The London Daily Telegraph newspaper said in January 2015 that women now fill the pews. Why are women filling the churches and not men? This has bred a not much talked about sexual frustration as women climb the age ladder. Postmodern minded church leaders thought that the emotion ecstatic driven praise and worship would fix things. but praise teams are always led by women, so men will not be drawn to a feminized institution. Churches are now also ordaining women to the ministry. That is only going to make the situation worse. Except for his mother, aunt or grandmother, a man will not take no spiritual authority from no woman. If she tries to rebuke him, he will look at her and say, "Who are you talking to?" And he has all the right to respond in that way. The Bible is unequivocally clear, and this is divine instruction, not postmodernistic opinion, where in 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1 it says, "This is a true saying, if a man, masculine, desire the office of a bishop, he desireth a good work." In the same letter in chapter 5 verses 1 and 2 it says, "Rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a" what? Father. And the younger men as brethren. The elder women as what? Mothers. The younger as sisters, with all purity. This is the divine mandate. And once you rebel against it, you're only going to fuel the sexual frustration already existing among the women in the churches. A CNN study showed that many young Christians are bored by church. L. Gregory Jones, a senior strategist for leadership education at Duke University, North Carolina, said that nearly 70% of full-time youth ministers have no theological education. So who are young people looking to for spiritual guidance? The narrator has always been very skeptical of Kirk Franklin. He just always seemed like an attention seeker. And now he has truly joined the dark side by collaborating with Kanye West, Andre 3000 and Puff Daddy. And guess what? He justifies it.
Well, I've only done one song. Okay. Yeah, so, the rest of his album is him. He invited me to be part of this one song that is very clear of what I represent. No profanity.
He says no profanity, but Rolling Stone says Kanye West is mixing profanity with the sacred. I mean, would any of you work with a man who promotes nihilistic lyrics like this?
I got a dirty mind, I got filthy ways. I'm trying to bathe my aid in your Milky Way. I'm a legend, I'm irreverent, I be reverent, I be so far. We don't give a.
Kanye West is an attention seeker like Kirk Franklin, and birds of a feather shall flock together. He has blasphemed on his album cover. But I would like to ask a very serious question. What message is Kirk Franklin telling the world? He is mocking God, and the world would get a distorted view of Christianity, making it a lot harder for sincere Christians to evangelize. But Kirk is not the only one. The narrator has also been very skeptical of Hillsong, who also, like Kirk Franklin, they send mixed messages. The Huffington Post documented that Hillsong's two former praise and worship leaders are and always have been openly homosexuals. What was Hillsong's leader's response? Hillsong's senior pastor, the Reverend Brian Houston in Australia, reaffirming the church's belief that a marriage is between a man and a woman, also said that Hillsong wants gay couples to feel welcome. No repentance. That's like saying I'm against terrorism, but I support ISIS. Its tattooed youth pastor, Carl Lentz, boldly says, "We have a lot of gay men and women in our church, and I pray we always will do." These mixed messages that are being taught by the rock star preacher is why the church is in a state. Why do ministries, pastors, and musicians in the churches crave popularity and attention so badly? These men who give the youth distorted views on sexuality also give distorted views on Christ. For he also hangs with Jay-Z, so it is quite clear whose side he's on. But while these men fulfill the Laodicean prophecy to the T, people are struggling in the church where more compromises are being made. The Catholic Church secretly invests in the porn industry, and the Church of England also invests in pornography. But one of the church's best kept secrets is its battle with internet porn. And because of the stigma attached to it both in the religious world and the secular world, no one is saying a word. For there is a huge addiction that is sweeping the church, and many of the strongest soldiers are being taken down. And like the secular world, even Christian women are being addicted to pornography, where more than half of Christian men are also addicted to porn. There are pastors who are addicted to porn, but there are a few Christians who are making those bold steps to confront the issue, not in a brutal, condemning way like many in the church do, but in a more Christ-like manner. And because the youth leaders are not theologically trained, from a little research, the narrator has discovered that Christian youth are also sexting. EvenAttheDoors knows there is a pandemic in the church, and in a series titled Restoration, it wants to cover this subject on sexuality titled The Laws of Attraction. The narrator knows how powerful the law of sex is and what it does to the whole or entire body. The Bible tells us its magnetic pull. In Genesis chapter 34 verses 1 to 3 it says, "And Dinah or Dinah, the daughter of Leah, which she bare unto Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her, or had sexual intercourse with her, and defiled her." And what was the effect of that sexual encounter? Listen to the language very carefully, and the words highlighted. "And his soul clave unto Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the damsel, and spake kindly unto her." Through an exchange of DNA, chemicals, and heated passion, using the same wording as Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, cleave, sex had bound them together via invisible forces that we cannot explain. And many have titled this soul ties. But the narrator fully understands that there are many broken people, lonely people, many struggling with pornography, masturbation, or the guilt of having an affair. And as this study is titled Restoration and not Condemnation, there is a God in heaven who can remove all guilt, pain, strongholds, and rebuild that broken soul. Let me introduce you to the true God of heaven, and let us see his plan for each one of us. The 8th century BC prophet Micaiah, whose name means who is like God, says, "Who is a God like unto thee, that pardoneth iniquity, and passeth by the transgression of the remnant of his heritage? He retaineth not his anger forever." Why? Because he delighteth in mercy. In other words, it is an absolute joy to God to forgive us and to restore us. But it goes even deeper. He will turn again. He will have compassion upon us. He will subdue our iniquities, and thou wilt cast all their sins into the depths of the sea. This is how God deals with us individually. But I would still like to give warning, for there are some very skilled scuba divers in the church who go down into the depths of the sea and like to remind you of your sins that God has forgiven you. But don't worry about them. God is going to deal with them. There is nothing God cannot heal you from. And as the Irish poet Thomas Moore said in his classic hymn, "Come Ye Disconsolate," earth has no sorrow that heaven cannot heal.